Hey, this is Steve Bloom, and you are listening to the Geekcast Radio Network.
You are now on the inside of what I like to call the circle of trust.
We are all connected in the great circle of life.
You know something, Bert? What? I think you and I are going in circles.
It feels like we're going in circles.
The circle is now complete. When I left you, I was but the learner. Now I am the master.
Because it's a circle.
Yeah, we heard about the circle.
Yes, we're familiar with shapes.
Hi, this is Greg.
This is Chuck. And this is Dan, and we are Talking in Circles, brought to you by the Geekcast Radio Network, the podcast where we're underappreciated and underused. Well, at least we think so. No, I say that because today we have another top 5, and we do these every so often, and today's top 5 theme is...
You know how Dan loves his top 5.
I do love my top 5s.
You know how he loves them.
They are a good time. Today's top 5 is top 5's underused or underdeveloped comic book characters. So we're going to try to get some of those characters that are not being used nearly enough and point those out to you in our big story today. But before we get to the fun of the top 5, how's the week been going for you guys?
Pretty freaking boring. I really have not done much.
Well, you have some excitement, right? The Dolphins won their first game?
Yes, that was pretty awesome. I know after we had our NFL preview, I'll pat myself on the back a little bit and say that I said my Dolphins were going to be a little bit of a surprise. And
by the way, everybody, it's Chuck's Dolphins. It's not anybody else's. It's not Jimmy Buffett's Dolphins.
Right.
It's not Dan Marino's Dolphins.
Yeah. I have 51% ownership of the team.
Nice,
so.
Nice.
Impressive. Share some of that mad Dolphins wealth, yo.
But yeah, they did good. That was awesome. And I love when we beat the Patriots because I can't stand Tom Brady.
Neither can anybody else, and anybody else is me.
Just that image of him on the bench with his head in his hands, like weeping. That was just,
is that your screensaver right now?
I cherish that moment. I got a decal made and I put it on my back window of my truck.
It's our new logo for our show. So. Crying Tom Brady.
That definitely was awesome. So that was a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, and Greg, your team won too. The Vikings were. I mean, by the time this comes out, week 2 will happen. So, but week 1 they dominated.
And hopefully they can keep that up. Hopefully they won't need a little purple pill partway through the season. Hopefully they can keep it up.
Yeah, and my Giants, well, they played football too. So that, you know. Well,
playoffs.
Yeah, no. So it's going to be a long season. And actually, I have a special letter for that later on in the episode for anyone who's in my boat for the NFL. Yeah, it was a bad weekend for me for football. I lost all my fantasy teams. My favorite football team, New York Giants, looks like they are, you know, not going to be that good this year. It's still early, but it's, yeah. Well,
yeah, you never know.
Yeah. They started off worse and won the Super Bowl, but, you know, I'd rather think negatively and hope positively, I guess.
There you go.
But, Greg, anything else going on for you for this week?
Well, since I got a whole freaking stash of graphic novels and stuff from the Comic Con, first off, I had to clean up my room from the mess that I created before the con, looking for different comics and trying to organize them. When I came back, I halfway completed getting stuff together, and then I was just like, fuck it, this is never going to be organized. I've got, how many? I have 8 long boxes at this point and like 3 short boxes. So I think that's just a freaking lost cause at this point. But I did do some reading. I read American Vampire by Scott Snyder, and I believe his name is Raphael Albuquerque or something. It's a really freaking weird name. His illustrations are really good, but I had difficulty with some of them trying to figure out what exactly was going on in the panel. It was just weird. I didn't know what it was. And I was a little confused by the story at first as well. But that kind of comes together a little bit more as you read on. I'm not a big fan of back and forth in time, and this kind of does it. and so that was kind of confusing
Wait,
me a little bit
does
at the beginning.
Does that include Back to the Future? With the back and forth in time?
No, actually, I understand that. That's one of the few back and forth in times that I actually really understand. But this book does.
That's because Doc Brown explains it on the chalkboard.
And he's got the nice model kit and everything. I think that's the key. They must not have had a model kit to explain it.
No model kit. But after I got partway through reading, then this is volume 1, by the way. After I got like partway through, it became a little bit clearer, and I got a little bit more knowledgeable of the names and everything. It's a really good read. Oh, also Stephen King writes in this book as well. Scott Snyder just kind of writes a little bit of a layout, and Stephen King doesn't stray too far from that, but he hits a little bit, because I read that in the little foreword by him. He wrote in the beginning, and Scott Snyder wrote an afterword at the end of the book. But it was overall a really good read. It was a kind of a little bit of a different take on vampires, I guess. It's interesting to see them developing in cowboy times and kind of coming up through time, I guess, and developing into a new type of species.
So what times does it like play with? Is it just, you said cowboy times? Is it like present day too?
It's 18.
I put you on the spot.
Yeah, I know. I have the graphic novel like a little bit across the room, and I want to throw off my headphones so I could go grab it and look.
We'll just say the olden days.
Yeah, it's around cowboy times, and the cars are just coming into existence and everything, and but it's got a great protagonist in there of Pearl, who I think's an incredible character so far. And then there's Skinner Sweet, who you don't know what the hell's going on with this guy, because in the past one he's kind of evil, but in the more future he's kind of good. So he's really getting tough to nail down of what the hell's going on with him and everything, which kind of leaves you really invested to I really want to get the next one, to be quite honest. But yeah, if you like Scott Snyder, if you like vampires, I would definitely check this out, because he does a really good job as always. So it's a big suggestion from me, is to go out and pick that book up if you haven't already.
Nice. I've heard so much about that. I've never myself gone out and put that out.
Yeah, and I heard a lot about it too. That's why I wanted to pick it up, and I think I found it at the one comic book shop that's near you. It's one of the things I picked up at their after party.
Oh yeah. We went to a Comic Con, and then afterwards went to a comic book store, because that's how we roll. So.
And then your girlfriends and wives thought you were crazy.
Hey, it's a sickness.
One of the very good things about me being single.
I'll just touch on something real quick too that I read. It's not a graphic novel, but a miniseries done by Boom Studios called Hit. I mentioned it last week because I talked to the writer of the series, Bryce Carlson, and the series is, I said 1920s when I talked last week, which I was incorrect, because it actually takes place more in the 50s after World War II. And have any of you guys seen that movie Gangster Squad by any chance?
Gangster Squad. Is that the one with Emma Stone?
Yes.
Another hot Emma, because we've got so many. I have not seen it. I just wanted to make a comment about Emma Stone, that's all.
No, I haven't seen it either.
It takes place around the same time as that in Los Angeles, too. And Mickey Cohen is like the overall figure kind of ruling Los Angeles during that time period. And Hit is about a guy who is a part of a squad that basically is trying to fight back against the mob. But it's actually, I really highly recommend the story. First and foremost, I should say, because the art is beautiful. It's like really great. If you're a fan of noir, and noir is very atmospheric, it hits that atmosphere perfectly with a lot of shadows, really unique art style. It's gorgeous to look at. It's done by Vanessa Del Rey. I think it's one of the first things she's ever done, and I think it's a beginning of some great things for her. So, and the covers too are really gorgeous to look at. Just like kind of in use of lot of like negative space and a lot of black, but then juxtaposed with some really stark red color for blood and things like that. So highly violent, but like really hits that a lot of the great tropes of noir. The story is pretty interesting too. It's just your basic story of your classic noir character who can never catch a break, and he has a few issues and tries to play both sides of the law. But it's interesting because they have really great characters, some great dialogue, and it really plays with the tropes a little bit of classic noir. So if you're a fan of it, highly recommend picking it up. It's only 4 issues. I do think there's some more coming out later this year, because I tweeted with Bryce Carson. He mentioned that something is coming out later. So I do think it's probably going to be hard to pick up the individual issues, but you can probably pick up the graphic novel when it comes out later this year. So again, it's called Hit, and it's done by Boom Studios. So
that's right, guys. We've got ins now. Suck it. That's what this is all about. We've got ins, you guys don't, and we're trying to give you ins as well. It sounded really sexual.
That sounded wrong, but anyway,
it feels so right though, guys.
Yeah. But we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be getting into our top 5 most underused and underappreciated comic book characters. And no, Wolverine is not number 1. So we'll see you in a bit.
Hey, I'm Gary.
I'm Mike.
I'm Chuck.
And I'm Justin. Join the 4 of us every week on the internet's #1 and longest-running G.I. Joe podcast, What's on Joe Mind?
It's Joe news, reviews, and interviews like you've never heard them before, delivered right to your MP3 player.
Our guests include Jason Marsden, Kevin Michael Richardson, and Matt Yang King from G.I. Joe Renegades, Larry Hama, Robert Atkins, and John Barber from IDW Publishing, and many more from around the online Joe community.
Yeah, it's guys talking about Joe. Think of it as Joe Talk meets sports talk. And we make fun of Chuck.
Right, and we... Hey, again?
Come on, Chuck. We're just kidding, kinda.
Sometimes Chuck makes fun of himself.
Right, and we... Okay, seriously, this is just getting ridiculous now.
It's What's on Joe Mind, every week on the Geekcast Radio Network, InsidePulse.com, Stitcher Smart Radio, and iTunes. Download and listen today.
I suppose I still can't say something about Transformers, can I?
Come
Good.
on, man.
No.
What about sports?
That sounds good.
Yeah, that's all right.
On the Simplistic Reviews podcast, we talk movies. We talk TV. We talk...
Hello, Julie, what the heck are you doing?
Trying to make our spots sound more exciting by adding explosions.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you could have got the point across with sound effects, not the real thing.
Download the show on iTunes or at simplisticreviews.blogspot.com.
I'm sure your insurance company will cover that.
No, they won't.
No, they probably won't.
All right, and welcome back. And like I mentioned, today we are doing a top 5 of the top 5 most unappreciated or underused comic book characters. So we're thinking those characters that have potential, those characters who could be so much better than they are, but for whatever reason, they just aren't being used properly. So we'll get into that very shortly. Before we get into that, do you guys have any parameters when creating your list? So what did you think of when you were thinking underused? Or did you just think, I like this character and I want to see more of it? Was it that simple?
I was thinking, oh shit, we're doing a podcast in about an hour and I need to write shit down.
Good to know. Well, Marvel.com does have like the character, surprise me. So you can just go on that. It's like, oh, that's a good one. So.
Who the hell is this guy? Oh, that's actually pretty interesting. Okay, we'll go with that.
Yeah. How about you, Chuck? Yeah,
pretty much like what you said. It was, I guess one of my criteria was I had to think that the character's interesting, obviously, but it's someone that I want to see pushed into the fray a little bit more into the spotlight of some of the bigger storylines and stuff like that. Ones that I'm not content with them kind of sitting on the sideline. I'd like to see more out of them. So
very cool. Yeah, I was very similar. I was thinking more ones that have shown potential, or either that they have a good framework and it's something we can expand upon. And I don't know if you guys were just simply thinking of being used more in comic books, but I was also thinking a little bit outside of comic books or different ideas that they could be used with. So something like I'd say, hey, this is really popular now, and this is kind of similar, so I could see how this could relate. So that was kind of my idea, which I'll get into more detail as we get going. But Chuck, I guess we can maybe start with you here. I don't know if you ordered yours in particular, or like sometimes we just do these as is, but who is the first person on your list?
Well, I didn't really rank mine in any particular order, so they're pretty much just at random. But I guess the first one I'll start with is Avalanche.
Ooh, I thought about him as well.
Yeah, for some reason I've always thought that this was a really cool character. I know they made him like really dopey on the X-Men 90s cartoon, which I didn't really care for. But even in that, I could see the potential in him. I just think he's looked past almost every time when you talk about X-Men villains. He's just a small-time guy. I mean, he's a member of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, but nobody really takes him seriously. And I really like his power set. I think they could do some really cool things with them if they gave him a little bit more attention. I know there was a story like way back in the day where he threatened to do an earthquake and put California into the Pacific Ocean or something like that. But I think there's a ton of potential with his powers, and they don't really use them enough. And one of the stories that I've yet to read, and Dan, you were nice enough to let me borrow it, is Fear Itself. I hear that he was sort of in that loosely.
Yeah, I don't remember him being in that, but
it could have been one of the companion tie-in stories or something like that. Just reading a little bit about him, I saw him mentioned in there, but other than that, I really haven't heard much out of him in the last several years. And I know he's thought to be dead now or something like that. It's something to do with the Red Skull. But
so that means he can't come back because it's comic books and dead people don't come back.
Right. That's that's permanent. That's always permanent.
I wish they would find some way around that, guys. Don't you?
Like time travel or clones or faking it or
heart was beating so slow you couldn't hear a pulse. Superman. But no, I would love to see them bring him back, give him some motivation to. Actually, I wouldn't mind him kind of becoming a good guy. Actually,
you know a good series or series that used him, or I should say cartoon, was X-Men Evolution. Like he was a main villain in that because Magneto was a little older. I thought he was. He kind of showed his stuff in that because he was on the forefront of being on the Brotherhood. So I thought he was actually used pretty well in that cartoon. So.
And I know he was in Age of Apocalypse for a little bit, I guess. Back in the 90s. I think Sinister approached him or something about being one of the elite mutants or something, but he turned him down. But other than that, like I said, I haven't heard much out of him. I'd like to see him become a good guy. I think there's a lot of potential there. I don't know about flip-flopping back and forth to good and evil, because that kind of gets annoying with characters like Sandman and stuff like that. But yeah, pick a side for him and take him in some interesting areas. I think that would be really cool.
Very nice. Greg, how about you? What's first on your list?
First, it's number 5.
Okay.
I'm leading up to number 1.
Alrighty.
5th on my list is the ruler of Wakanda, the Black Panther. He comes in every once in a while. Like, he's a great ruler. He's the one guy that Doom really fears. He's the one leader that Doom really fears, I believe. I think one of us said that.
I did.
Okay, Dan said that earlier.
I would give myself credit. So.
Yeah, I did that.
He's like Captain America, but way smarter, maybe not military smart, and he's got some great resources there. And you've had people come in and writers come in and try and use him and have like little one-shot mini-series, but nothing really develops. And he's one of the great minority characters in the Marvel universe that doesn't really get out there. And there's a lot of Black people, Latino people that read comics, and I think the Black Panther would be a really good comic. He's just a great person to kind of look up to. He does ruling a nation right, and that would also be an interesting aspect to look at. So there's a lot of people out there that would really be looking for this book. Like there's an audience there, so I don't understand why he isn't used more or used better. And
Yeah.
please take out anything where I sounded even remotely racist, where I did not mean to be at all.
You weren't racist.
Every white person, even if they try not to be, is probably a little bit racist.
I guess so. I don't know. Maybe only person that passes that test is Mr. Rogers. He might be the only one.
That's very true. Very true.
But there was actually a really great Black Panther series in like 2007-ish that was like right after he married Storm for that storyline that lasted pretty while. That was great because like he went around to like all the different nations. It ended like adding like a little political aspect, but in like the comic book world, which was really cool. But they ended up like switching that series. That's when they brought out like the female Black Panther, which was a great idea. It wasn't, but you know, that was going really well for a while, but they just canceled it. Maybe it didn't sell well. I don't know. But like I agree, Black Panther, I really like that character, and maybe if he gets a movie like he should, he'll see more popularity in actual comic books, not just be like a side character in the Avengers. So.
Yeah, that's all he ever usually is a side character for the most part.
Yeah. And for my first one, I did kind of order mine as well, though like I feel really hard ordering some of these, but my first one, number 5, is a little bit out of left field. I'm not sure if you guys are going to agree with me on this one or what you feel, because it's not really even a superhero per se. It is a comic book character, and this guy has no superpowers. He's just like an middle-aged man that is a reporter, and his name is Bob Ehrlich, who works for the Daily Planet. You might be thinking, well, how can you underuse that type of character? Well, if you've ever read the storylines for Civil War Frontline, or even the storyline for Circuit Invasion Frontline, it kind of got into like the ground level of what being in the like Marvel universe was like, and it was really cool seeing that end of it. Like that's something you really don't see. You see like the comic, you see, the superhero end, but you don't see like the common person's end. And Bob Euler is like probably the most famous reporter in all of Marvel, like as a fictional character. He works at the Daily Bugle, I believe. I think he's kind of gone back and forth, but I just think it'd be a great idea, even if it's just a mini series or something, to use him as a character that kind of reflect on some of the bigger stories and see how it's affecting like normal everyday people, what that's like, and getting that angle. Maybe even interviewing people. Interviewing some of the bigger villains or things like that, kind of like a 60 Minutes but for supervillains or something. I think there's a lot of potential there just to like expand the scope of comic books, so it's not just all superpowers, but seeing a more intimate level with it. So I don't know if I'm crazy, but I just think there's some sort of potential there. So.
Is his name Bob? I thought it was something else. I thought it was like Ben or something.
Is it Bob? Maybe I'm wrong. Sorry.
Yeah, I thought it was Ben.
Yeah, you're right. I wrote Ben, but I said Bob, so I renamed him.
What about Bob, Dan? What about Bob?
You redefined his character.
Yeah, I thought Ben wasn't a good enough name, so I changed it to Bob. So Ben, you're like
fans are going crazy. How can you not say that Ben is not a good name?
I know. But yeah, so I would highly, if you are a fan of Civil War, if you've never read that story, I would highly advise reading the Frontline story, because to me that was maybe one of the best parts of that entire book, or that entire event with the Frontline aspect of it. I thought it was a cool idea, and I thought it worked well, so I would like to see more of it.
He wasn't the guy that the Marvel story centered around, was it?
No.
I don't believe so. I think it was someone else.
Yeah, because I thought that was somebody else.
He's just a reporter, and the guy from the Marvels is a photographer.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And he has been in movies. He was in Daredevil.
Joey Pants.
Yeah, played by Joey Pants.
That's right.
So I guess Marvel still has him since they have Daredevil now, so I assume they could still use him. He might show up in some of those Netflix direct to.
I heard that movie or that show is going to be a lot more harder than the movie. It's going to be a lot harsher kind of vibe.
One could hope. So.
Yes.
All right, Chuck. Bringing it back to you. What's next on your list?
Let's see. Underused character. I'll go with Superman.
Yes.
Batman? No. Let's see. My next one I'll go with Mimic.
Oh, that was an honorable mention for me. Nice.
Yes, from obviously from Marvel. He does have a spot on the Exiles team. But I think that's kind of where he's at, and that's kind of where he stays. I'd like to see him, more in the forefront of some bigger stories. I mean, in a way, I guess you could say he's being used more as of late, but I love his ability to mimic any power, and he can hold, I believe it's 5 characters' powers at once.
Yeah, something like that.
And I think he could use them at half of the power of that person or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So if he was mimicking Cyclops' optic beam, he would have it at like half the power of Cyclops' full blast. But I just love those abilities, and when you start looking at the combinations you can make with the 5 powers and stuff like that, there's just so much potential there, and I think there's a lot of neat things you can do. Now I know there's a couple versions of him, because like the original one was actually the 6th member of the X-Men back in the 60s for a very short time, and he like permanently had the powers of the original 5 X-Men. But then you have like some alternate reality versions, like the one in the Exiles, where you can kind of take anyone's ability. I'm thinking more of something like that.
He was great in that book. Like, he was one of my favorite characters. Like, him and Blink had a really great relationship, and it is a big reason I fell in love with that book, because of that character.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and even that, like teaming him up with somebody like Blink, I mean, that's a pretty powerful combo, honestly.
Yeah, it was just cool seeing the different combinations. Like, you'd have Wolverine's powers matched with Colossus's, steel, with X-Men, with the rays of Cyclops, and it was just cool just seeing all the different combinations they would come up with. So
yeah, and then you could start using them tactically in like different situations, and like which power would he use to get out of this certain situation or stuff. I'd like to see him in some big crossover events, like something major, just kind of bring him into the spotlight a little more. I think there's some great potential.
And one character on my list highly relates to that character. So, and I'll get to it very shortly. So, all right, Greg, moving on to you. What's next on your list?
Next on my list is Cloak from Dagger and Cloak. He got a little play during the Civil War, kind of transporting Captain America back and forth, his team. And after all that happened, it's like, what the hell? Like, nobody else is like, oh, that's actually really good. We should get in on that. The X-Men did for a little bit. During the dark X-Men phase and everything, and when Norman Osborn was taking over S.H.I.E.L.D. and whatnot, the X-Men had him in use for a little bit, but then all of a sudden he disappeared again, and he's got an interesting little dynamic there with Dagger and everything, and his whole backstory of, I believe it was being an addict and falling in with that, I believe, and with his mutation, and like he can teleport people with his cloak and whatnot. It's just a really cool power that needs to be used a lot more.
Yeah, he just looks awesome too. It's like taking Batman's cape and making an entire character around it. So
yeah, and some of the people that usually use that are kind of like traumatized afterwards.
Yeah. It's been used really effectively. I think House of M was used well too. There was this really short series called like House of M Avengers, I think, or X-Men, I forget. But Cloak was part of that too, which was an interesting series. But yeah, I do love that character and that dynamic. It's just a cool name too, Cloak and Dagger. I know it's a common saying, but I would love to see them used a lot more. I guess maybe it's hard when it's like his main power is his teleportation, so it's just defense. But if you're clever enough, you can come up with some ideas of how to use it.
Oh yeah, there's like teleport somebody onto something dangerous, and like a guy a pipe sticking out of the wall, teleport him over to the pipe just right before he's gonna fall, and falls the rest of the way onto it. It'd be pretty sweet.
Yeah, these ideas are for free, so feel free to use them.
Mine costs billions of dollars, people.
Next on my list is, I'm kind of cheating here, and I'm kind of using using an entire team. I don't know if that's fair, but I feel
Is it the Exiles?
I call bullshit. No, I'm kidding.
No, it's not the Exiles. The Inhumans. They're a little bit mutant, a little bit superpowered characters.
A little bit country, a little bit rock and roll.
Leader with Black Bolt and Medusa. A lot of tons of Gorgon, Korvac. A lot of characters within the Inhumans. And they are really weird and wacky in a lot of ways because they're not necessarily mutants, but they kind of are with the Terrigen Mist. They have their own little separate powers. And they seem to kind of come up here and there. They have their moments. There was like that miniseries Silent War that kind of came and went. They had a really great Inhumans Marvel Knight series, which was fantastic. I really enjoyed that series. And they were in the War of Kings storyline. But I just think that their team as a whole just has so much going for it. So many great characters, so much drama within it. It's like I mentioned when we talked about like what Marvel should do in making TV shows. It is very much like a Game of Thrones meets the X-Men type of universe because it's, you know, they have Black Bolt's the king, and so there's some like a royalty dynamic there, and with his brother, it's a Maximus, I believe, who tries to usurp control from him. There's a great dynamic there that's gone on for a while.
Not the Russell Crowe version of Maximus.
No.
Nice.
Yeah. Are you not entertained? I hope that you are, that you're listening. But yeah, I just think that they have a lot of cool... I mean, I think I could put Black Bolt alone on this list because I really like that character, even though he doesn't talk. He can't talk, but I just think...
I wanted to get your thoughts on that, Dan. I mean, I'm guessing you'll have a rebuttal to this, but I just wanted to pick your brain. I feel like with a character like Black Bolt, they kind of wrote themselves into a corner with him because you can't do any dialogue with him. I mean, obviously they can kind of talk through Medusa, but do you think that kind of like holds him back at all, or does it help him as a character?
It certainly makes it tough. Definitely, because you're having someone speak for him per se. I mean, you could always do thought bubbles if in certain situations, but I think with a great artist, because I go to that Marvel Knights series, that I think used him and portrayed him really well because he didn't speak at all, but you could see a lot within just the emotion of how he was drawn. So it is challenging because you're limited to what you could do. But think of something like I Am Groot, right? They were able to use that in different ways. It's a little harder for sure when your main character is unable to speak, but I think that's why he's so much surrounded by a lot of colorful characters because they kind of make up for that. And it's more so the reaction of the characters to him that you kind of understand. Like you can see when they recoil a little bit, he's angry here because you can see these characters are a little uneasy, or he's, it's, you read into Black Bolt by the reaction of the characters around him. So it is certainly challenging. It's a lot harder, but it's something like Professor X, right, who can't walk, but they're able to kind of use that for their advantage, or just make him walk because they do that sometimes too. So, I mean, I guess like you said, you can always add in thought bubbles since he won't be speaking, or even get a character who's a telepath or something like that if you really needed to. But it's I think though it's kind of a good thing when you have a character who's really powerful yet has somewhat of a disability, you would say. So I think it adds to the complexity of the entire team.
I'd like to see him use that power more. Get him in. I know it's like, if he whispers, he can level a mountain or something like that. But it seems like they would never really give him a chance to cut loose. I think I've seen him do it like once or something. I feel like most of the time he's just kind of there and like being really quiet and stuff.
Yeah, the one time they kind of got alluded to it was in World War Hulk, where Hulk stops at their moon base and Black Bolt confronts him and he does it, but they kind of cut away and then you see his like disheveled body beaten up by Hulk. So that was like the one time where they kind of let him let loose, but then they didn't, and they just
I wonder what one word he said after being, not being able to talk for so long. Like, what one word would you want to say so bad?
Bazinga. So that's good. That's a good question. But yeah, so that's my next. That's my number 4, the Inhumans. All right, Chuck, back over to you. What is next on your list?
Next up for me, I'm going to switch it up and go to a different universe other than Marvel. And also this one's a little different because I'm going to go with something that's known more for its movies. And my next character is Darth freaking Maul.
Nice.
Because he died way too soon. Damn it. Still pisses me off to this day. I know they've tried to, in the comics and the graphic novels and stuff, they tried to go back and kind of retcon his history a little bit, and they gave him some mechanical legs and stuff where he came back. But I mean, if you just look at the movies, I think he was very underutilized and poorly at that. I think he was just kind of like a stand-in guy. He was just kind of there. But they didn't realize that inadvertently they made this really cool character that they could have taken and run with him just because of his martial arts ability. And like, at that time, everybody's like, holy crap, a two-sided lightsaber. Like, this guy's ridiculous. There was just so much they could have done with that character, and to kill him off that quickly, I just have a big problem with that. And I know a lot of other Star Wars fans have voiced that as well.
Yeah. I mean, he was the best part of the first movie, and he looks cool. He's got cool powers. Yeah, he's got a cool name. So much there. I 100. That's a good pick. Yeah,
I agree. They could have had Obi-Wan defeat him, in that particular scene, but they should have left him alive for him to come back, like either in episode 2 or 3, because some of those movies desperately needed some things to lift them up too. So yeah, I think that could have been another bright spot to put into one of those films.
He's a much better character than Count Dooku. So
yeah.
So, which sounds just like, like you're doing a bowel movement or something. It's like, I just had a Count Dooku.
Although, I mean, I did enjoy his fight with Yoda, but I think it would have been much cooler to see Darth Maul versus Yoda.
Oh man,
just two people flipping around. Yeah, just two guys flipping around everywhere and doing flips and shit and fighting with lightsabers. That would have just been awesome.
J.J. Abrams, you've heard us. Get it done. You can do it. I don't care. Flashback, whatever. Just get it done.
Could be like a dream that like Mark Hamill had one time.
Yeah, very cool. All right, Greg, over to you. What do you got next for us?
For my number 3, I picked somebody that was kind of prominent in the 90s and now has kind of just a little bit petered off. I thought he's a villain character that turned good for a little bit there, and then for a little bit you weren't sure what he was, and then there was a cool little mini series with him, and a lot of people are just gonna hate him, but they're gonna love to hate him. Baron Zemo. I think that's just a great line. They had a whole thing where he was going along his family line and killing off people in his family line, and that was the miniseries, and that was such a good miniseries. It only lasted 5 issues, and then after that, Baron Zemo was gone for like forever. I haven't heard anything about him. He's one of Cap's greatest enemies, if you ask me. Yeah, he looks kind of stupid with the little pink mask, but the character is just so awesome, and his bravado. And he used to be a Nazi, and who doesn't love to hate a Nazi? I just true. But I'd love to get a little bit more Baron Zemo in the mix. I feel like they just immediately go to Red Skull every time. But you've got somebody awesome who's kind of switched sides at one point and became a good guy with the Thunderbolts, but then went back to being bad. He's so murky and muddy, his past, that it would just be something interesting to go deeper into. That's what she said.
Yeah, I agree. That's a great pick too, because there's potential there with the fact that every generation becomes a Baron Zemo, so you kind of never run out of him, basically.
Yeah, even if he dies, you could have an illegitimate son come in, or even change it up even further and have a lady Baron Zemo.
Yeah, there you go.
They love doing that.
Yeah, exactly. They're doing it with Thor. Come on.
Baroness Zemo.
Yeah.
You can get that lady from the Baroness from G.I. Joe and have a crossover, and there you go.
Ooh.
Greg, what do you think of his newer uniform? I think it looks a lot cooler.
I haven't
with,
seen
like,
the newer one.
Um,
Looking up on my phone.
well, it's kind of like the darker. It's like a really dark purple.
Okay, I think I've seen, hold on, I'm looking it
with
up.
like yellow gloves. It's definitely more badass than like the white furry thing around his shoulders.
Oh, come on. Everybody likes the... Oh, wait, I think I see it here. Hold on. He's still got the pink mask and the... Okay, I see it. Yeah, that looks pretty sweet.
Yeah.
It's kind of a skirt thing going on,
And
but whatever.
I'm looking at my Marvel Legends figure that I just got of him, and he's kind of got like these double shoulder holsters things for his guns. And
Yeah.
he's got that going on, and then he's got, the dark purple outfit that kind of looks like the Hawkeye outfit from the 90s a little bit, but...
While I'm on the images looking through, I found this one where he's in a bomber jacket. He's got like these little these silver wrist thing that kind of goes up from his wrist to his elbow that look pretty cool, and like some kind of fighting pants, and it
Fighting
looks
pants.
pretty.
These are my fighting pants.
Yeah, and he's got that purple hood thing on. It looks pretty freaking sweet. But I love the freaking bomber jackets, the beige bomber jackets with the fur stuff.
I think that one was from the Brubaker run in Captain America, if I'm not mistaken.
That freaking outfit looks freaking awesome. Bring him back in that outfit.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Very cool. Yeah, good pull there. And you're talking about a Captain America character, and I'm also going to talk about a captain character, but not that captain. And I think this character gets kind of crapped on mainly because his name's kind of lame.
Cleveland Steamer Man?
No, but that character would definitely be underused. I can guarantee you that. Mostly because he's from Cleveland. I'll admit right here, all my characters are from Marvel because I don't read enough DC to be able to say anything. But this is a Marvel. I know. This is a Marvel character but he is living across the pond, and he's from United Kingdom, or I should say Britain, because he is Captain Britain. And I know you might be thinking he's kind of a lame character. Why would you choose Captain Britain? And my response to that would be read Captain Britain in the MI13. It was about 7 issues or 8 issues. It got canceled because it did not sell very well. But
because we're not in Britain.
But it completely sold me on the character of Captain Britain. It was very cool how they used the mythology of a lot of classic, a lot of Britain fables and whatnot. Like he uses Excalibur. There's a lot there. That team itself was also really great, and they ended up bringing in Blade for a little bit, which was fantastic. It had so much potential. There was a lot of cool things on how it used magic. He has a huge amount of mythology behind him. Plus, he's in a location that's unique and different. There's so many Marvel characters that are always in New York City. Maybe you'll get a few that are in like San Francisco or something like that. But across the world, like I said, similar with Ben Urich, this again expands the scope of the Marvel universe because you get to see an entire new land with new characters and new villains, and it doesn't make it just United States. And he's been in tons of things like Excalibur, and they've kind of had success here and there. But I think he's a character, if you have a good writer who knows his stuff, knows his British history and mythology, knows a lot of those fables, there's a lot to really bring that character into, because he uses a lot of that. Like a lot of his powers come from different magic and whatnot. And I didn't even know that until I read that series. So if anything, you learn anything today, go read Captain Britain MI13. The bad thing is it does stop suddenly because it got canceled, but it was such a great series that it completely changed my mind on the character. I don't know. You guys fans at all of the character? Are you not a Captain Britain fan as much as I am?
I'm not too much of a fan. I guess he never really drew too much interest for me for whatever reason.
Yeah, I mean, the name doesn't help. It just seems kind of generic.
Yeah, but I never really read a lot about him either. Like, I never read too much of the Excalibur stuff or anything like that.
Yeah, I would say that series actually had one of my favorite tie-ins to Secret Invasion at the time. So, and Greg, knowing like your love of different King Arthur and stuff like that, or you're fans of that, you might enjoy some of its tie-ins.
I actually did read that storyline, and I did like that group of characters. I'm just kind of so on Captain Britain. I think he's just kind of a generic type of character, and the Ravens just scored a touchdown.
Nice. I'm only saying nice because I'm playing a team that has the Steelers defense, so I don't know. We record these on Thursdays when Thursday Night Football was going on, and can I just say, I hate Thursday Night Football. It's a horrible idea. NFL, stop doing it.
Yes.
It's awful. But
agreed.
All right, my last pick was not the most popular. That's all right. I enjoy it.
Yeah, that's okay.
I'm gonna wear it with pride. But moving on to Chuck, what is next one?
You'll be a big hit with the nerdly folks.
Exactly. I gotta represent, right?
Damn it, I should have thought of that. Then I could have got all the hot British chicks like Emma Watson and Karen Gillian. Damn it.
That's just how that works.
That's how it goes.
It is how it works.
Wait. Hey, Emma Watson, I'm a Captain Britain fan. Oh, really? Here's my number. Why don't you call me?
I'm sure there's some other captains you can mention, Greg. Captain Brazil, Captain Italy.
Bill, good one.
All right, Chuck, what's next on your list?
Next up for me is another X-Men character. There's a few of them on my list, but this one is, I guess, more from kind of the 90s, which a lot of them seemed like they kind of fell off the map after all the 90s nonsense. But this one I actually thought was one of the cool ones that's been glossed over as of late, and that is Exodus. Are you guys familiar with him at all?
Yeah, he's a villain. I actually had his figure growing up as a kid. I don't know much about him. I just remember he was it Family Ties? Was that the one he was in? I forget.
Blood Ties.
Blood Ties. I was close.
Yeah.
Family Ties, the TV show?
Yeah, he was in Family Ties. It was weird. Yeah, they did a crossover with Marvel. Yeah. I would sing the theme song to that, but I don't know what it is. So.
Come and knock on our door. It's not that song.
No, it's not. We'll just sing all the wrong ones, right?
Yeah.
Monday, Tuesday, happy days. Like, no, wait. All right. So, sorry, Chuck. You were saying about Exodus?
Exodus was one of Magneto's acolytes. He was arguably his greatest follower, him and Fabian Cortez. But Exodus was a very powerful mutant, or very powerful guy. He had he's listed as having incalculable psionic powers of telepathy and telekinesis, and has enhanced strength, and he's like almost invulnerable and all this other stuff. He can fly, but he has actually a pretty cool backstory. He was like a crusader back in the 12th century, and he had some ties with the Black Knight from that time period. They were actually friends, and Apocalypse ended up kind of finding Exodus and unleashing this power that he had inside of himself, but he kind of enhanced it a little bit, I guess you could say, and kind of pit them against Black Knight and stuff. And he, in the end, he refused to kill the Black Knight, so Apocalypse put him in suspended animation, and Magneto ended up awakening him in the 90s story. And that was kind of after, do you remember when Magneto ripped the adamantium out of Wolverine?
I do. That was a good time.
The famous story from...
Not for Wolverine, it wasn't.
Good time for everybody with Wolverine. That was the Fatal Attraction story. And Xavier just got so pissed off that he just lashed out at Magneto with like a psionic bolt and left Magneto basically in a coma.
Yeah.
So he was kind of like just this husk of a person, and the rule of Avalon kind of fell to Exodus, who was the next most powerful acolyte. And that story with Blood Ties, after reading that, I really enjoyed this guy as a villain. He's a really cool character with some cool power sets like I talked about, and the backstory. He's a very radical villain. Like he has a very extreme view on the relationship between mutants and humans, and he would make just one of those villains that you would absolutely love to hate, just because he's such a dirty person. Like the way he feels about, he's just so racist against humans. Like he thinks mutants are just superior and they deserve everything, and he's really was kind of a scumbag in the Blood Tie story, you know, killing innocent people in Genosha, just because they were humans and stuff. But he has a lot of potential to be that upper echelon type of villain, and I think you could put a spin on his motivations and stuff, and make him really interesting.
Interesting, yeah. He's one that, again, like I remember hearing about. I remember that story, but I don't know much else about him. So, and you can always use a good villain. So, I'm sure Marvel can find a way to use him somehow. All right. Anything else on Exodus before we get into Chuck's next one? Or Greg's next one, because I can count.
Take it away, Greg.
Greg, what's next on your list?
I've just got 2 words for you guys, and I'm not even going to go into her that much.
Man thing.
That's the first time you've ever said that.
Squirrel Girl.
Oh.
That's all I need to say, you guys. Squirrel Girl.
She is the most powerful character in the world. So
she is. She took out Doctor Doom. She took out Thanos. Like, come on. What? And plus, they've got Deadpool, this wacky character, and Squirrel Girl is just as wacky. She's got that cute bucktooth thing going on. Like, who's not going to pick up that comic?
I know.
She's the question becomes, like, is she too busy with her appearances on SpongeBob to come into the Marvel comics?
She's like, you know, Deadpool and Rocket Raccoon in one character.
So. Exactly. So it's what we need now. It's not what we want, Marvel. It's what we need.
She's not the character we want. She's the character that we need.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
All right. So
Squirrel Girl, can we trust her?
Tipsy, can I be trusted?
Wow. There's a lot of things you could have been doing there, but I'll move on.
There you go.
It was Tipsy the squirrel.
Tipsy. Yeah.
Everybody in the club getting tipsy.
All right. My number 2. I'm cheating again because I can cheat, and I will do it. And I'm having another team on my list. And right now, Guardians of the Galaxy is huge. It's the biggest movie of the year. Everyone loves it. It's gigantic. Characters are selling off the roof. Tons of merchandise. It's really big, popular. Now, space is huge right now. So
space is always huge, Dan. I don't know what you're talking about.
just right now, it's big. Before that, it was kind of tiny. It was, you know.
Well,
it
it's
was
expanding,
like,
so it is bigger than it was like yesterday.
True. And bigger now, and then bigger now. So, no. Fiction taking place in space is popular right now. There's a lot of potential there, obviously. People want new and fresh and different characters. And unfortunately, for Marvel, a lot of their great space characters are X-Men related, you know, or outside of the Marvel realm that are owned by, like, the Skrulls and whatnot. And I'm thinking of a team that maybe not necessarily are very much exactly like Guardians of the Galaxy, but I think they could have potential and be kind of interesting in their own right. And they have a big X-Men tie, and that is Corsair and the Starjammers.
Nice.
Cyclops is actually hanging out with his dad right now. The one from the past is hanging out with Corsair, and he was just used in an X-Men storyline maybe a month back.
Oh, wow. See, I had no idea. I'm not.
But they're kind of gone, and we haven't heard much from them.
And now they're gone.
Gone.
And like Greg mentioned, for those that did not know, Corsair and the Starjammers. Corsair is actually Cyclops' father, who was kind of abducted by aliens because that's what happens. And he ends up becoming...
all the time in the Marvel Universe. All the time.
Really does. It's like he was dead. No, he wasn't. He was abducted by aliens. Oh, okay. Colossus, and there's a lot of different characters.
That's what happened to the Jimmy Hoffa of the Marvel world.
And Amelia Earhart, too. So
yes.
But yeah, so he was abducted into space. He ends up becoming a space pirate. So... which is like, I mean, right there, space pirates.
Space pirate.
Like, that's pretty awesome. He ends up forming this team of the Starjammers, which have as a character named Chode. Like, that's the name of a character. Like, come on. That, like, you cannot sell Chode t-shirts. I don't know what you can sell. Like, it's gonna be huge if they move forward with it. But kind of interesting characters. You have like another dude who looks like kind of like a pirate in a way, and a girl who's more like almost like Wolfsbane in a way. She's like a wolf lady, basically. But so it's a lot of cool, interesting, different characters. They have an awesome starship, and it's more so like Firefly than it is like Guardians of the Galaxy, because there's, it's not nearly as comedic, but you can kind of spin it that way. So I just think that's got potential there. And maybe, like I said, not just comic books, but maybe even potentially a movie. I mean, it can allow Fox to expand what they're doing, so they're not just doing the same thing over and over again. Kind of do some space battles of their own and bring in Shi'ar, and there's a lot of potential there. There's a rich cosmic universe that they're not even really approaching at this point. So that's why I just think the Corsair and the Starjammers, they have a miniseries from way back, like in the 90s, which was okay, but I just think it's a team that hasn't really, I say, proven a lot at this point, but there's just a lot there that you can expand upon and have fun with. So, but all right, that was my number 2, and we're already down to number 1 already, which is kind of crazy. We're underappreciating our underappreciated characters. Who knows? But all right, Chuck, you got one more left. Who is last on your list?
Last on my list. This is gonna sound like a made-up character. The more hardcore Marvel fans will know this character, and that is, of course, Champion of the Universe.
Nice.
It totally sounds made up. I know.
Champions, we are the champions.
Funny thing is, he's the one who wrote that song, and people don't even know it. So.
Cause we so it's Freddie Mercury?
It is.
That'd be awesome.
That's what happened. He did not die. He got abducted by aliens. So.
Cool. Yes, I love Freddie Mercury.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to be the champions of something, if you're going to proclaim yourself champion, why not be champion of the universe? But he is a elder of the universe, a race of super old, powerful guys in the Marvel universe. I honestly love this character from the moment I read him in the Thanos Quest books, and just the idea of a guy who has spent millennia perfecting his fighting styles and traveling throughout the universe, testing himself against other great fighters, was just the coolest thing to me. And I think at that point, I remember reading a bio of him or something that he was like undefeated. He was like, his record was like 20,000-0 or something like that. He had just like honed himself to this perfect fighting machine. And, plus the battle that he had with Thanos was actually really cool, because he was in possession of the power gem at the time, which was a big reason that he won a lot of his fights. He didn't realize it. He thought it was just this
he's
this
a cheater
trinket.
like Dan. We all know it.
Yeah. I mean, he thought it was just this trinket, but, he had it in his possession. And Thanos knew he couldn't beat him physically, so he kind of had to outsmart him to get it. I mean, obviously, he's not the sharpest tool in the shed, if you remember that story, because he completely destroyed the planet that they were fighting on, and they literally had nothing to stand on. He's floating on a piece of rock in space. So he's definitely not the brightest guy, but his fighting ability is second to none in the Marvel Universe, and he's wicked strong, especially if he has the power gem, but even without it. And I know they've done a couple things with him since. I think he was in a couple of She-Hulk issues a few years back where, in an odd twist, she actually ended up beating him in a match and stuff. I think he has a ton of potential as a character, and I think maybe you do something like you did with Drax the Destroyer, where you take a character that was really dumb back in the 90s and you give him more intelligence, make him a little bit more brooding, and he becomes this complete badass. I would love to see Champion have something like that happen and put him on a team like maybe like the Annihilators or something, which is a team that I love, by the way, and they're kind of an honorable mention for me too, that I want to see more of them. But I think, if you put somebody like Champion on there, that would be totally awesome. I think he would hold his own on that team and fit pretty well with those other guys. And even give him some solo adventures, give him a mini series maybe, where he's traveling the cosmos, kind of going to all these different fighting tournaments and fulfilling his legacy that he wants to learn every fighting style in the universe. So kind of take him to some different planets and things like that, and different tournaments, and almost like a Bloodsport feel to the comic, kind of.
The best issue will be the over the top where he learns how to arm wrestle.
Yes, to wrestle for the custody of his son.
Stallone's he's gonna teach him how to arm wrestle. But yeah, that's a character that I love. I don't really know why. I guess it's just, like I said, just the ability of him to fight like no tomorrow. I mean, he's mastered like thousands of different fighting styles throughout the universe, and I think it would be cool if they went through and kind of chronicled some of the greater fights that he had. I think that would be interesting.
Yeah, and plus he has a haircut that kind of looks like classic Hulk Hogan. So
yeah, that's for sure. He's kind of bald on top with some, pretty long party in the back.
Yeah, very cool. All right, Greg, it's your moment of truth. Who is number one on your list?
He had a mini series not that long ago. It was about 3 to 4 years ago, and it just put a different spin on the character, which I really enjoyed, and I wish it lasted a lot longer. And the character that I'm talking about is Taskmaster.
Ooh,
whose big power is essentially to mimic everybody else's fighting ability. And in this mini-series, he essentially, it told us that by learning these different fighting abilities, like the memory for that has to be used from somewhere, and with using that brain power, he loses his memory of his past, kind of, and he has this handler that kind of controls him, who we kind of find out is his wife. I believe I remember it going, but it was just such a cool, different spin on the character, and I think that character is kind of cool to begin with, a character that figures out everybody's ability, and there'd be a lot of cool tie-ins with Deadpool as well, because him and Deadpool are kind of buddies, and I think he would have an interesting outlook of the world of villains.
Yeah, I love that character. For one, he looks pretty awesome too.
Yeah, he's just a giant rubber skull face with a cape and a swashbuckler look kind of going on.
He was like, I remember getting his like Marvel Legend. That's when I used to collect those, and he was one of my favorite ones. So he's like single-handedly taken down the Avengers before and stuff, and I love that power. And
a bunch of people have used him for training. I believe the Avengers had him for the what was it?
The Initiative, or
the Initiative. And he used to teach different fighting styles to the cadets and that. So that was also a cool use of him.
Yeah, definitely. Very cool. Yeah, Taskmaster. I do enjoy that character. Very cool. All right. So now it's my moment of truth. And back when Chuck mentioned that he had Mimic on his team, I said, well, I have a character that's related to that character, and that is my number one character. And I love the Exiles comics. It's one of my favorite series of all times. And I thought about putting Blink on the list, but I don't know how underused she is. I think she's getting more play now. She was really big in the last X-Men movie, so I see her popularity growing. But the character that I'm going with is another one of my favorite characters from that line, and probably the second favorite after Blink, and that is the character of Morph. And if you watch the 90s cartoon series, Morph was actually a thing created for that series, but the Morph for Exiles is a little bit different. He looks just like almost like a putty from the Power Rangers in the 90s. Or like a ghost. Got like no nose. He's kind of gray character with no face. He doesn't look like an actual human being. But his story is actually really tragic, and it's funny because he's a really comedic character. He has almost some Deadpool-like moments where he doesn't completely break the fourth wall, but he comes very close to it. I can think of a situation where he morphs into the face of the comic book guy from Simpsons and says something like "worst episode ever" or something like that. He makes a reference.
He's also got a bit of a Genie from Aladdin going on too.
Exact. That's a good point. Yeah, he's like if Deadpool and Genie from Aladdin had, kind of combined. But he also has a lot of tragedy to him as well. There's behind his jokes, there's some sadness of what happened to his family because he's from an alternate universe, and they've taken a lot of the Exiles characters and brought them into the normal universe, and I think Morph is a really good one to use. He was actually a leader of the X-Men in his universe, and which seems weird to have like the comic believe that, but he can be more than comic relief. I just think he could blow up if they used him properly. Like his ability, his writing for that character is pretty much limitless because of all the different things you can incorporate, his ability to morph into different creatures and different people. So you can always have some sort of funny thing or reference to go to. And I just think he's a character that is, on the surface, you just think he's like a class clown or something you can just laugh at. But there's so much underneath that character when they've kind of expanded upon him further. So I did really love that character. Like I said, I don't currently read comics, but after the Exiles kind of went downhill, his character was still like the best one and the most charming, and I would love to see him used even more. I think he's one of those bright spot characters that if he could break out like Deadpool did. When Deadpool was just kind of a side character and then suddenly became huge, I could see it happening with Morph. So, but I'll just run through my top 5 again real quick. My number 5 was Ben Yorick. Number 4 was the Inhumans. Number 3, Captain Britain. Number 2, Corsair and the Starjammers. And finally, number 1 was Morph. Chuck, what were your 5 again?
My number 5 was Avalanche. 4 was Mimic. 3 was Darth Maul. 2 was Exodus. And number 1 was Champion of the Universe.
And Greg, how about yourself?
5, Black Panther. 4, Cloak. 3, Baron Zemo. 2, Squirrel Girl.
That's the most badass way anyone's ever said Squirrel Girl.
1, Taskmaster.
Thank you, announcer from Marvel vs. Capcom guy.
I'm getting that job next year. I'm taking that over.
Yeah. See, all my characters were Marvel characters. I don't read enough of DC I feel like if I said this character's underused and then DC characters, fans would be like, he's got like 8 comics. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. I don't read DC. So
mine were all Marvel too. I did have Aquaman on there at one point because I was like, I don't know who else to pick. Aquaman, that's an easy one to go to.
Chuck, did you have any honorable mentions, or do you guys have any honorable mentions that didn't make the list, but you thought about putting them on besides Aquaman?
I did have one that was really close to, a couple that were really close to making it on here. The first one was Graviton.
Ooh, okay.
A classic Avengers villain. Came around in the late 70s. But again, really cool powers. He can levitate objects and people, and complete control over gravity, can generate force fields and stuff like that. But I never saw much of him, but I actually saw him in the Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes cartoon from a couple years ago, and I remember really liking him in that and thinking, wow, like, why do they not do more with this guy, you know?
Yeah.
Bitch.
What?
Heath Miller fumbled the ball.
Here are live updates to the Steelers-Ravens game 5 days later.
Guy. He's got a weak personality, but they could tweak his motivations a bit. So Graviton's one. And a couple of my favorite Spider-Man villains, Shocker and Scorpion. For some reason, I love those two villains, and I really wish they would get more play. I know
Shocker wishes he could get more play.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that he could have some fun with, but yeah, I think those two are just really colorful villains, and I know that for the most part they're kind of cannon fodder and stuff like that, but they're top quality. And I look at like Quasar and Beta Ray Bill, who are in the Annihilators now. They really didn't get a lot of spotlight over the years. Beta Ray Bill's been in a couple of things. He was in that Omega Flight, which was
that was really good.
Yeah, it was, and I wish we could have seen more of that, because I think it was only like 5 issues or 6 issues.
Yeah, I think so. I really like that too. I wish the Pocahontas character from that.
Oh yeah, was it a shaman's daughter or whatever? Like,
yeah. That outfit was outstanding.
The outfit. Yeah, it's a good character. Mm-hmm. But no, I wish that series kind of kept going. But yeah, I'm a big fan of Beta Ray Bill. And Quasar is pretty cool too. I like his new look compared to the 90s version. This one's a lot better. I'll do a DC character, even though I might get yelled at, and that's Red Tornado. I think he's a really cool character. He's a Vision type of character. He's like an android, but he can actually kind of change back to his human form too, which is kind of weird. but he has these really powerful wind powers and stuff. I know he has been in a lot of stuff in DC recently, and I never see him included with like the DC heavy hitters, like especially when the animated cartoons come out. Like I never see too much of Red Tornado, and I always thought he was cool. I'd like to see more of him. And then Blade. I always want to see more Blade.
More Blade all the time.
Yes.
Some of my honorable mentions, Mimic, like you mentioned, and Cloak and Dagger I had on there. Also, Moon Knight, who kind of gets labeled as just like a Batman knockoff, which he basically is. But he's got some really dark aspects to him, too. And he, too, had a great series around 2006 or so that was really rather bloody and gory, but it was really good. I thought he was really interesting of a character that you could do a lot of cool things with, being with his relationship with. He's kind of sometimes an Avenger. He's a little bit crazy. He kind of talks to dead people. So, that's always a plus.
Does he see them though?
I don't know. I don't know. I also thought about Black Panther as well. So, but yeah, most of my honorable mentions are already mentioned. So, Greg, anyone else you wanted to bring up or?
I'll mention a Dark Horse character. I forget his actual name, but he's the homunculus guy from Hellboy. He's just kind of a badass by himself, and the whole kind of history and magic behind that whole universe could just be expanded more, if you ask me. But other than that, I was having trouble coming up with people.
All right, very cool. All right, so that'll bring it to the end of the top 5. But before we go, we like to end each episode with a letter. And this week I am up, and we talked about a little bit of the NFL as we started the show. And as I mentioned, I'm a New York Giants fan. And as we've recorded this, currently there's only been one game, but it wasn't very great. And I know there's always a lot of anticipation to the upcoming NFL season. No matter what your team did last year, there's hope that this is the year that they can improve, get better. NFL, a team could be 3-13 one year and be Super Bowl champs the next.
It's 23-6, guys. It's 23-6. Troy Polamalu just tried for an amazing block at the field goal kick.
Good to know. Good to know.
Nice.
But sometimes, those hopes are dashed rather quickly. You're a Cowboys fan, and Tony Romo forgets what color uniform his team wears. And then Eli Manning does the same thing. Or you have an offensive line that doesn't know what they're supposed to do. So the idea is this is written for those fans that were looking forward to the NFL season, and quickly you're like, well, this is going to be a very long 17 weeks. So I'm just saying, hey, I feel for you. Hey, you, chin up. I know football is back, and all those hopes and dreams you built up over the last 6 months have been dashed after a quick few hours. Does your quarterback look more lost than a Wall Street exec stranded in the middle of Harlem? Is your defense so inept a sure-footed elderly woman on a half-powered little rascal could put up 250 rushing? Are your receivers' hands so bad they couldn't even catch Ebola if they lived 3 months in the rat-infested African sewer? Does your coach game plan using Tecmo football? Well, don't fret. Life can still go on. This is the time when you don't just jump on the next best bandwagon, cough Seahawks fans cough, or host a public bonfire of all your team memorabilia, or write racist epitaphs on your team message boards that states your players are simply full of suck. It is a time to show your pride and root harder than you ever rooted before, because maybe, just maybe, your one cheer will be the key factor in turning the season around. Or, when that turns out to be BS, you can just divert self-deprecating humor to hide the tears as your team continues to lose over and over. The tears, the many, many tears. So football is back, and for many of us, we're already ready to see it go away again. The bad times make us stronger and make the good times so much more enjoyable, especially when you beat the Patriots twice in the Super Bowl. You remember that? You remember when the Giants did that? That was good, right? When they did that, they won the Super Bowl. That was a good time. Oh, look, Eli just threw another interception. Anyways, we'll get through this. We'll get through this together. Sincerely, your misanthropic football fan.
Nice.
I got really depressing at the end.
Yeah. That's how I felt on Monday night, as I'm like, oh, look, they decided not to cover Calvin Johnson. Because why would you do that? He's just a freaking Megatron. So, yeah.
I was listening to some talk radio during the week, and the guy was asking the person they're interviewing, they're like, at what point do you start, like, double teaming Calvin Johnson? And he's like, I don't even think they were single teaming him. Like, he was wide open.
Yeah, it was just a bad coach. I'm just hoping for honestly this year, like, I don't know if Eli's done, but he needs it's a new offense. I think Tom Coughlin looks like he retired 2 years ago. He's just like, I don't know. Like, he doesn't even look that upset. He just looks discontent. He's just like, whatever, I don't care. But yeah.
Yeah, I feel your pain. I've felt like that for many years now.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really complain. Like I said, they have won 2 Super Bowls, but it's like, it's just, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of the Giants GM. I think he's gotten away with a lot. I think he's kind of, the team he's put together is kind of bailed him out, that he's not really cultivated a lot of great talent, but I don't know. We might be talking too much football and people might change the channel, so I don't know. But, but yeah. Hey, in some ways, though, you get to the point where, like, your team's out of it and there's no chance of them winning, so it's just like, it's almost like there's no more stress. So it's just like, all right, whatever. You're just playing to the end of the season, so it can go both ways.
See how high of a draft pick we can get.
Exactly. But all right, anything else before we bring this episode to a close?
I got nothing.
Throw
Greg?
it to Heath Miller. Bastard.
All right, I guess that's a no. So Greg can see his fantasy points just drop over and over again.
Yeah.
All right, so that's the end of this week's episode. There's tons of ways to get in contact with us if you wish. You can email us at feedback@geekcastradio.com or on Twitter and Facebook. Just search Talking in Circles GCRN. Greg, you are also on Twitter. What is your Twitter name?
What? It's at the Create Forge.
I am also on Twitter at Movie Revolt, and Chuck is still not on Twitter.
Jason Mantzoukas of the podcast.
I feel like you're pressuring me.
No.
Do it now, Chuck.
I'm just kidding.
It's like a drug.
And you can also go to geekcastradio.com and comment on the episode post. Seems where we get the majority of our communication. But anyways, so I'd like to thank you for joining us for this week. We'll be back next week, same time, same channel, same podcast feed. But for now,
this has been Chuck.
This has been Greg, or Squirrel Girl, or a guy waiting for Heath Miller to catch a goddamn pass and get a touchdown.
And this has been Dan, enjoying Greg's tears. And we've been Talking in Circles. We'll see you next week.
Stop flicking tears off my face, Dan. It's not cool.
That's why you don't trust Heath Miller. I mean, come on now. You know better than that.
I made a mistake during the draft with tight ends. I picked up somebody who I've never freaking heard of before in my entire life because I pressed the wrong button. So
yeah. I did that.
You got to be extra careful when you're dealing with tight ends.
Yeah, you got to. I mean, you don't want to get the wrong tight end. Like, some tight ends aren't as accurate. They don't have they can't
receive as well.
Well, they can't withhold a lot of punishment. Like, a lot of tight ends, they'll knock right out. Like, they get too much punishment and they're out of the game immediately. You need a tight end who can take a good pounding. So
this is all going in at the end of. They fumbled again.